acknowledge the team from the PIOJ. I want to acknowledge our students as well and members of the media for helping us to carry the good news. And I've got to say that this week has got to be the best good news week. Starting first, the first item of good news is that the Bank of Jamaica's Monetary Policy Committee, during its meeting on May 16 and 19, 2025, unanimously agreed to reduce the policy rate, which is the rate offered to deposit-taking institutions on overnight placements with the Bank of Jamaica by 25 basis points, or think of it another way, a quarter of a percentage point, from 6% to 5.7% per annum, effective yesterday, May 21st, yes. And the second action that the Monetary Policy Committee agreed was to preserve relative stability in the foreign exchange market. You will note that the Bank of Jamaica, in its press release, said that the Monetary Policy Committee reaffirms its commitment to maintaining low and stable inflation and will deploy the tools necessary to preserve stability. It also said that the Bank of Jamaica will continue to carefully monitor domestic inflation expectations and any upward pressure on prices caused by the evolving tariff landscape. I just want to take a minute to present this pictorially. This is what the inflation chart looks like. It's coming up any moment now. No. All right, we'll come back to that when that chart comes up. In the meantime, I will move on to the second good news. And it's that the preliminary, okay, let's go back to the inflation charts. Okay, so you will see a chart showing the inflation numbers. And the reason for putting that up will become evident. So the blue bars show headline inflation, or the inflation numbers that Staten reports. And they just recently reported point-to-point inflation at 5.3%. Point-to-point simply means that you're comparing inflation at a specific point in time, such as at the end of April 2025 to the same point last year, April 2024. So the yellow line that you're looking at is core inflation, and that means it's headline inflation less food and energy, which is what the Bank of Jamaica is targeting. And it is this inflation that is expected to remain within the 4 to 6% band as a policy objective. And the dotted black lines is the band in which core inflation needs to remain between 4 to 6%. Why is all this important? You know, if you go back in time, in 2021 in particular, there was a significant change that this government did. So it amended the Bank of Jamaica's Act, and it gave the Bank of Jamaica the authority to implement the inflation targeting policy. By achieving a specific inflation rate, the Bank of Jamaica helps to stabilize the economy and make it more predictable for businesses and individuals. And I want to say, for me, of all the changes that this government has done to modernize our economy, inflation targeting is the one that I am most awed by. Having lived through the 1970s, with inflation going as high as 80%, to be living in a period when we have a government with a policy for inflation to be in the range of 4 to 6%, and to experience it through the actions of the Bank of Jamaica, for me, it is simply mind-boggling. I never thought I would live to see this period in which inflation is targeted to remain in the 4 to 6%, and to be a part of a government that set this in motion. I am eternally grateful for that. So we move on now to the second good news for the week, and it is the preliminary GDP figures from PIOJ, which showed that there was growth in all except one industry for the January to March 2025 quarter. Starting with the goods producing sector, that sector increased 1% overall, and when you drill down into it, agriculture, forestry, and fishing was positive at 0.1%. And you can, well, if there were charts, you would see the significant decline in the July to September period last year because of the massive impact of Hurricane Beryl and then Tropical Storm. But then you would see the significant recovery going from negative 12% to a positive 0.1%. And similarly, mining and quarrying improved by 0.5%. Again, if you were able to see the charts, the same pattern, impacted by the weather, but then coming out strongly out of that. Manufacturing was up 1.5%. Manufacturing, construction grew 1.5%. The construction pattern is different. It had been negative, but if you recall, during the period last year, the government spent significantly to repair schools, roads, and other buildings. So the construction industry benefited from that spend, and it's solidly positive for this most recent quarter. On the service side, electricity and water supply recovered strongly from the negative where they were. Wholesale and retail trade, repair and installation of machinery, which had been negative, is finance and insurance services. That sector lost some momentum leading up to Beryl last year and Raphael, but remained positive during the review period, registering 1% growth. And then for hotels and restaurants, that sector felt the impact of the severe weather-related event, but rebounded strongly, up 0.8% in the January to March quarter. Of all the 8 sectors that make up the services industry, 7 were positive in the range of 0.5% to 1.8%. There was only one that had a slight negative, and that was real estate, renting, and business activities. I'm also happy to indicate that PIOJ has said that there is a 5.3% increase in airport arrivals for the month of April, which is a strong signal for the hotels and restaurant sector. And for their short-term growth expectation for the next quarter, the April to June quarter of this year, the economy is projected to grow within the range of 0.5% to 1.5%. And for the full fiscal year 2025 to 26, growth is projected within the range of 1 to 2%. And we come to the best news of the week, of the year, of the decade, and that's the reduction in the poverty rate. A massive decline from 16.7% in 2021 to 8.2% in 2023. This is the lowest since poverty rates were first measured in 1989. And if you could calculate, that was over 3 decades ago. This is really good news to celebrate. And you're going to hear from Minister Charles as well as he speaks about the minimum wage. That has had a significant impact. The increase in the minimum wage has had a significant impact in reducing the prevalence of poverty. So PIOJ said the significant reduction in poverty can be attributable to the significant improvement as well in the employed labor force. And when you look at 2021 and you compare that with what happened for 2023, a net increase, a net increase 5,600 persons being employed. That is something to celebrate as well. So if you recall, where we are now, our unemployment rate is historically low at 3.7%. We continue to include more persons in the labor force. Businesses continue to need persons, and we're seeing people become gainfully employed. PIO said as well, they presented some other numbers. It talked about the rate of extreme food poverty at the national level. In 2021, that was 5.8%. When they measured it again in 2023, it was 2.8%, a significant reduction in the rate of extreme food poverty. PIOJ also said the increase in consumption was likely influenced by increases in the minimum wage. And if you'll recall, and Minister will go through this, since April of 2022, this government has been increasing the minimum wage. And the reduction in the poverty rate was evident across all geographic regions. All. There was no region in Jamaica that did not experience a reduction in the poverty rate. And lastly, there is another important figure that PIOJ presented, and it is a figure. PIOJ looked at inequality in Jamaica. It looked at the consumption-based Gini coefficient, and the Gini coefficient is really a number that quantifies the inequality of consumption within a population or a group. And the range is 0 to 1. So if you're at 0, it means that everyone is consuming the same amount. If you're at 1, it means that only one person is consuming everything. So the closer the measurement gets to 0 is an indication that equality of consumption is improving. And we saw over the period, when we compared the data 2023 to 2021, that our consumption-based Gini coefficient showed a decrease towards 1 and towards 0, and that is good. Finally, regarding consumption expenditure, the data revealed that there was a 5.3% increase in real, meaning take out inflation, real average per capita consumption across the country. Ladies and gentlemen, I am still processing all the good news this week, and the week is not even finished yet. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, Minister, with all of that good news, all of that good economic news. And I'm going to move to our next presenter, and then we'll do questions all at the end. The Honorable Colonel Charles Jr., Minister of Labor and Social Security. Please make him welcome.
to the happiest Minister of Finance and Public Service that Jamaica has seen, to all of the permanent secretaries, directors, colleagues, Jamaicans, I must tell you, it is a profound honor to have the opportunity to serve this country. And I address you today not only in my capacity as Minister of Labour and Social Security, but as a proud Jamaican who has personally witnessed the remarkable progress in this country and the positive transformation. If you are to assess Jamaica objectively, it would be difficult for you to not applaud the several positive trends. And I tell you this before I start. Just think of it. If we were to have the news of all of these percentages going in the opposite direction, it would be a riot. And we should have that same kind of energy, because Jamaica is becoming stronger, we are more stable, and our future is brighter. Yesterday, the Planning Institute of Jamaica announced, as you know, a significant decline in the national poverty prevalence, from 16.7% in 2021 to 8.2% in 2023. And we acknowledge and say good morning to our most honorable Prime Minister, Dr. Andrew Holness. I was saying, yesterday the PIOJ announced a significant decline in the national poverty prevalence from 16.7% in 2021 to 8.2% in 2023. The 2023 poverty prevalence of 8.2% represents the lowest recorded poverty rate since the commencement of poverty measurement in Jamaica in 1989, marking a historic milestone for our nation. Notably, this substantial reduction suggests that nearly half of those below the poverty line in 2021 have successfully transitioned out of poverty by 2023, a testament to the effectiveness of our social and economic policies. Now, it is important for us to understand and appreciate the broader context in which this historic milestone has been achieved. According to the PIOJ, the decline in poverty is primarily attributed to a notable increase in consumption among the most vulnerable segments of our population, specifically the lowest 40%, that is, those who consume the least in our country, increased their consumption at a combined rate of 28%. Quintile 1, which is the poorest, increased their consumption by 12% as they had more money to spend on their families. And quintile 2 increased their consumption by 16%. What then has driven this remarkable progress? Ladies and gentlemen, it is the result of prudent economic management underpinned by robust and targeted social assistance programs and initiatives provided by the government to significantly improve the socio-economic conditions of many, many Jamaicans. As I said before, this low poverty rate is not just a statistic. It is a powerful story of Jamaica's transformation, of resilience, and I dare say, of leadership. And at the heart of this, the Ministry of Labour and Social Security continues with and across government to advance targeted programs, bold policy decisions, and a relentless focus on protecting the most vulnerable in our country. The thousands of Jamaicans are moving now from struggle to stability, from survival to success. And one of the programs most critical to that is our PATH program, the program of advancement through health and education. The Ministry of Labour and Social Security we have implemented a range of social protection programs and initiatives aimed at empowering our citizens, particularly the most vulnerable. Now, while we hold a portfolio responsibility for both labor and social protection, it is through the social protection programs that the vast majority of our clients are served. Prior to the increased consumption of our poorest citizens in 2023, there was also an average 18.5% increase in PATH benefits in 2022. And you can see the direct correlation. This increase in 2022 was preceded by a significant spend on PATH in the financial year 2020-2021 of $12 billion as part of the COVID-19 response. Through the government, we provided critical support to our most vulnerable during the pandemic and subsequently increased the value of benefits in the post-COVID period. These strategic interventions have significantly strengthened the capacity of the poor to increase their consumption levels and the quality of life. PATH beneficiaries have seen increases of 2.411 billion or 28.8%, moving the budgetary allocation from a little over 8 billion in 2023 to now almost $11 billion last year. In addition to PATH, we also have our pensioners, some of whom fall in those quintiles. And in 2023, the lowest rate for our pension benefit was increased by a whopping 74%, moving from $1,700 per week to $3,000 per week, bringing the rate more in line with the food poverty rate. In addition to the NIS pension increase, in addition to the PATH increase, we also saw the introduction of social pension in this country. And since then, in 2021, we have seen several Jamaicans who could not even think of receiving any support being considered, valued, and being assisted. By the end of the first year, which was 2021, the program had reached over 6,200 beneficiaries. Now, designed to provide critical financial support to individuals aged over 75 years old who lack any access to other forms of support, such as PATH or NIS pension. Social pension has become a vital lifeline for many, many, many senior citizens in our country. And by the end of 2023, the number of social pensioners had increased to 89%. That is over 11,700 social pensioners. You can clap. It's a good thing. Underscoring now the government's unwavering dedication to enhancing financial security and overall well-being of our most vulnerable elderly population. I tell you this, the increase of 672 million was an increase of 164.71%. I know that some of you are saying that I must be incorrect. No. We moved the budgetary allocation from 408 million in 23-24 to over 1 billion in 24-25. That's an increase of 164.71%. Now, another important program which the Ministry of Labour and Social Security utilizes to bolster support, particularly this time for the micro-enterprise development, is the Steps to Work entrepreneurship grants. We have provided support for several, and among them are primarily the most economically vulnerable individuals. And we've done so by increasing expenditure on our entrepreneurship grant initiative from 44.5 million in 2020-2021 to 69.4 million in 2022-2023. and you can see the trends. If you do an analysis across the board of all of the relevant programs, you see two things happening consistently: increase and improve. This strategic investment reflects the government's commitment to expanding income-generating opportunities for vulnerable persons who traditionally face significant barriers to accessing business capital. They can't just walk into a bank and get support. They don't have all of the necessary supporting documents to get the support from certain institutions. But the government has not forgotten them. The government is providing that support, and we're seeing the results. Through this initiative, the ministry has empowered almost 500, many individuals to pursue entrepreneurship. And again, we saw an increase of 8.85 million, or 46.21%, moving the budgetary allocation for grants from 19.15 million in 2023-24 to 28 million in 24-25. And I'm carrying you through so you can see the connection, the nexus between these positive outcomes and the deliberate strategic decisions and execution from the government. Now, very importantly, as you heard our minister say before, is the national minimum wage. And as you know, the minimum wage has moved from 2016 again by a whopping 158%. The minimum wage is one of the primary factors, or the movement of it, driving the positive trends. It serves as a critical social protection mechanism designed to safeguard workers from excessively low earnings. A significant proportion of our most vulnerable citizens are minimum wage earners. Many of them have directly benefited from the significant increases implemented since 2016, moving from 6,200 then to what is now 16,000. Most notably, however, and connected again to the poverty reduction that we are noting today, is a substantial increase implemented by our Prime Minister in 2023, moving from 9,000 to 13,000 in 1 year. Again, that is a 44% increase in 1 year. These recent adjustments to the minimum wage have placed more disposable income in the hands of the working poor, thereby enhancing their financial resilience and contributing to the transition of a number of individuals out of poverty. It's not happening by chance. It's happening because of calculated, deliberate, strong, sensible, effective decisions and strong execution. I want to move quickly as I close to just discuss also the unemployment rate. Unemployment and poverty are inextricably linked, as elevated levels of unemployment often result in increased poverty due to the absence of a stable income to meet basic needs. The historic decline in the poverty prevalence recorded in 2023 has coincided with a reduction in unemployment, which fell from 7.1% in 2021 to 4.3% in 2023. If this government was a student in a class, now you tell me, you'll be getting more than a 4.0 GPA. Furthermore, data from the Statistical Institute of Jamaica indicates that the employed labor force grew from 1,234,800 individuals in October 2021 to 1,320,400 in October 2023. Again, a clear indication of the expanding employment landscape in Jamaica. This growth in employment has played a critical role in reducing the risk of poverty, as more Jamaicans are now able to secure income and to improve their standard of living. Similarly, the Ministry of Labour advances our electronic labour exchange, and the Ministry's labour market interventions come particularly through the ELE, which is the Electronic Labour Exchange. And we have seen where it has reflected a notable increase again in the demand for labour. In 2023, the number of reported vacancies rose by 61% compared to 2021, signaling a rebound in labour market activity. This surge in vacancies not only provided valuable administrative insights into the pace of the labour market recovery, but also expanded access to employment opportunities for job seekers. You can see the correlation. And now I close by just indicating that the remarkable strides that we have had in terms of reducing poverty, expanding employment, and strengthening social protection are not merely statistics. They represent real improvements in the quality of lives of thousands of Jamaicans who have been impacted by these decisions. These achievements are the result of deliberate, people-centered, inclusive, and transformative policies. We want to applaud the sound economic stewardship and steadfast commitment to social equity of this government led by Prime Minister Dr. Andrew Holness. And I want to encourage Jamaicans to continue to support and to stay positive as we together choose Jamaica. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister. And as I said earlier, this government is what good governance looks like, and the person behind a lot of the good governance policies, all these policies you've been hearing about this morning, is our Prime Minister, Dr. the Most Honorable Andrew Holness, who joined us while Minister Charles was speaking. And I'm now so very happy on this morning where there's just so much good news to bring to the podium our Prime Minister. Please welcome Dr. the Most Honorable Andrew Holness.
Thank you, Minister. I'm certain the ministers who spoke before me would have gone into much detail. My job is not to repeat the statistics and the analysis that has gone before, but I think it is important to reinforce for the nation that this massive reduction in poverty, in the prevalence and measurement of poverty, is a big deal for all Jamaicans. There are those who would want to make light of it, but I would quickly remind that were the data pointing in the other direction, much heavy weather would have been made of it. You wouldn't stop hearing all the negatives. So it is important that we accentuate this positive news. Now, there is always the issue of reconciling these statistics with the lived experience of Jamaicans. The tool that we use to measure poverty has not changed much. It is a standard tool. We have sought to ensure that our tool that we use to measure is aligned with international standards. And indeed, the methodology that we use is robust, well-tested, and aligns very well with global standards. So there can be no naysaying or criticizing the results. The results are what they are. They are robustly tested, and you can have great credibility and confidence in the results. For us, for the government that is, we were always expecting that poverty would be reduced significantly, because we have implemented what I would like to describe as instrumental policies, meaning policies that are directly crafted to treat with the specific elements of poverty. The academic perspective on poverty is that poverty has several dimensions to it. You look at the income of the person, the ability of the person to earn and consume. You look at the person's access to knowledge and information. So you're looking at their education levels and how they use that knowledge to innovate and create their economic abilities determined by that. And then you would want to also look at the person's access to amenities, access to healthcare, proper roads, things like of that nature. There are other elements, of course. You want to look at marginalization, whether or not people are actually included, this issue of inclusion in the society. Those are all metrics and measurements of poverty. And we were very focused on looking at all these dimensions. And in every single dimension, the metrics that would be used to measure, Jamaica has made substantial progress. Now, how do you reconcile these statistics with the lived experience? There are always persons who will say, well, my condition is not better off. I go to the supermarket and my prices continue to rise. Well, you know, I listen to the radio and I hear people say, I don't have water in my pipe. There are still potholes in the road. I wait long when I have to go to the health center. So how is this? How does this make sense? Well, let's step back for a little bit. Minister Charles would have gone through the details about, for example, the minimum wage. Let's look at it from a practical point of view. In 2021, if you were to give the annualized minimum wage, someone would be earning about $468,000 at the minimum wage at that point in time. The poverty line then, which was assessed at the minimum level of consumption, or if you want to flip that, the minimum level of income that someone should be earning, would be about $224,000, thereabout. So someone would be considered absolutely poor if they were earning just below, at or below, $224,000 yearly. So those are the persons who would be considered absolutely poor. But consider what this administration has done, which was instrumental, direct, deliberate. We increased the minimum wage by about 44%. And the minimum wage in 2023, if annualized, would be somewhere around the region of about $677,000, thereabouts. And a person would be considered absolutely poor in 2023 if they were earning at or below $270,000, thereabouts. So you can see that the government took a deliberate decision to increase the minimum wage, meaning the earning capacity of the lowest wage earners in the society. So that would have increased their income and their ability to consume. And this increase was above inflation. So you would generally be better off. You'd have more income. But let's not stop at the minimum wage. The government increased the public sector salaries and wage bills significantly, the highest increase that has ever gone on in the history of Jamaica, significantly. Now I know there are issues, there are still issues with various sector groups trying to resolve, but you can't naysay that. You can't deny that there has been a substantial increase in the public sector wage bill, significant, and that would have introduced to households more income. But put those two aside, say those weren't significant. What is significant, however, is the reduction in unemployment. So households that didn't have persons employed now have employed members of their household. So the household income, by virtue of that, would have also increased. Now, let's be clear. We are not here saying that we are satisfied with the wage level. No one can argue that everybody wants more pay. Yes, and we're working towards that. But if you weren't working before and now you're working, you have more income. And so that has had a massive impact on the absolute poor in Jamaica. So this issue, which I've heard being said that our government focuses on trickle-down economics, meaning that we only uh, focus on making businesses work and focusing on the high-level macro stuff. That's absolute rubbish. There could be no greater lie told on government policy than that. This administration has been the most focused on treating with the microeconomic elements of poverty, dealing with the social safety net, putting in place things like the social pension, which didn't exist before. We are now looking at unemployment insurance, didn't exist before, giving access to training in heart and all the programs that we have put in that would have enabled households to access employment. All of these are deliberate strategies, not giveaways, not wishful and fancy things to just spend, but things that make you able to earn from your labor and your talent. So we have been very instrumental, and I think that has been a critical part of the success of our program in alleviating and addressing poverty. So what it means is that there are less persons in Jamaica that could be considered absolutely poor. What is the objective? No. What's the next step of the government? The next step of the government is to end absolute poverty in Jamaica. This is something that I have said before, and it is the intention. At 8%, we are within striking distance of that. We can end absolute poverty. But of course, once you reach to that point, you're going to set a different threshold, a much higher threshold. So you're in a different level now. And that's the idea. So we want to ensure that we push this poverty prevalence number way down. And then at that point, we can revise what's the new threshold for somebody to be considered living at or below the poverty line. So it's quite doable. It is within our capabilities to do it, but we must continue with the strategic policies. We must continue the training of our young people so that they can continue to work and earn from their labor and talent. We must continue to improve the social services, the access to amenities, and we must continue to ensure that our marginalized population is protected by a very effective social safety net. And in that regard, the Minister of Labour and Social Security has been tasked, and he gives us updates pretty regularly about how we're going to revise the PATH program. I get too many complaints of persons who believe that they should be on the program and are not on the program, and from those persons complaining that there are persons on the program who they know should not be on the program. So really, there has to be a review, and I know that the review is ongoing, but the efficiency of the program is also an issue as well, how people get their benefits and how timely those benefits are. So we're digitizing that process. The minister, I'm certain, will come with a further update. But we're also looking at ensuring the inclusion element for those persons who are marginalized and in vulnerable situations where they are not able in and of themselves to access these benefits. And there are many Jamaicans like that. They may be in rural areas, they may be in some inner city communities, and they are of the notion that if they present themselves to the state, they're going to be rejected, or they're going to be subject to something that might demean them. And that is absolutely not true. So what we're going to be doing is very shortly rolling out the Solidarity Program. And the Solidarity Program is designed to treat with those persons who have not gotten any of the social benefits. They are not on the social pension. They are not registered on any of the programs of PATH. They are not in HEART. So we're going to find them, and they will get their cash grant, and we will assist them in bringing them into the formal system. And that will have another major impact on addressing poverty by dealing with the exclusion element. In other words, including all the people in the population who we have not yet reached. So I just thought I'd come and share this perspective with you. Thanks for listening. God bless you, and remember to always choose Jamaica.
Thank you very much, Prime Minister. And Prime Minister, you have some members of the UE Guild in the audience that came to post cabinet this morning. Remember earlier we spoke about these being the lowest poverty number since 1989. I was 9 years old in 1989. I'm now 45 years old. But you've known good policy. That's what you've grown up with. It's very important that you listen to the history, and these ministers gave you some historical context. It's very important that you understand where Jamaica is coming from. You've been in university at a period when our economy has gone really well and where you've seen good policy. But we have to understand what went before, so that as you are doing your studies and thinking about taking up your role as leaders, that you understand where we need to go and what kind of policies will take us there. So thank you for being here with us, and I open up to Naomi.
Good morning,
One
Minister.
question? Okay, PM can take one question?
PM, can you?
Okay, he has to go.
He has to go. Thank you. Thank you so much, Minister. Prime Minister, the ladies and gentlemen online are applauding the move, and they have asked just one quick question. So I'll take one from online and then one on the floor. They really just want to they pointed out online that a part of their idea of why the poverty rate decreased was a new social housing program, and certainly that the social pension the Prime Minister alluded to. So clearly the Prime Minister has his ear to the ground, but they really wanted to get some timelines from you, Prime Minister, in terms of how soon then can we see a further evaluation to ensure that those in abject poverty would be lifted, given the new figures.
My understanding is that the survey is done routinely. The Minister, it's done yearly now. So you're going to see another set of results coming out shortly. So bear in mind, it's a 2-year. I think it's done yearly. My recollection is that it is done yearly. So you're going to get some results. There might be a lag, but in terms of the year that it is published for, when it is published, but it is done yearly. So you're going to see a progression in this regard, barring any epiphenomenal event, such as God forbid, any weather event or some unforeseen global trade crisis or commodity price shocks or something like that. But which raises a very important point. The programs that we're putting in place will continue to push the prevalence of poverty downwards. So you're going to have less persons in absolute poverty. The program that we have crafted, which is the Solidarity Program, is designed specifically for that, to pull those persons who are excluded from employment, income, education and knowledge and amenities, to pull them into the formal system so that they can be a formal part of the social safety net. That action alone should yield some significant results. But since you've raised the question about timeline, and I've put in the caveat, which is that we will reduce absolute poverty providing there is no supervening event, such as a global pandemic. The ability of the country to recover quickly from these kinds of external shocks is also an attributing factor to us being able to reduce poverty. So we have focused heavily on fiscal stability as a a parameter of government performance. We're looking at growth and productivity as another parameter of government performance. But what escapes the public often is the new feature of the Jamaican economy, and that is resilience, the ability to recover from shocks. Previously, when we were hit by a global recession, it took us 10 years to recover. When we were hit in 2008, 2009 by the global recession, we did not recover the level of GDP we had in 2009, 2008 until 10 years after. And that has been the case in our history. Because of good economic policy, when we were hit by COVID, within 3 years, we were able to recover. We were hit by Hurricane Beryl, and I'm certain that you're going to see, well, we have, the data is out. We have recovered very quickly. So, you know, the average Jamaican should not underestimate the importance of having an economy that is not just fiscally stable, but an economy that can recover quickly. The next, as I've said, the pivot for us, the next phase, the next stage is growth. And with more growth means less poverty. So yes, we are going to push heavily to reduce poverty, right? And I've always said it, you know, like everybody else, we love the poor, but we hate poverty, and we're going to eliminate poverty from our society. Not by talk, not by wishful thinking, not by empty promises, not by beautiful speaking, but by strategic, deliberate, and instrumental policies.
Thank you. Thank you, PM.
Prime Minister, thank you, Prime Minister. Then let's just have one from the floor, and then I know the Prime Minister has a very packed day.
Yeah, he has to leave.
All right.
Morning, Prime Minister. Mahiri Stewart from Nationwide News here. I made note of both you and Minister Charles Jr. saying choose Jamaica at the end of your speeches. And we know that Jamaicans do have a choice to make. The general election is constitutionally due by September. Do you think achievements such as this historic low in poverty will increase your administration's chances of remaining in government after these next general elections? And if yes, why?
Thank you for that question, Mahiri.
No, the question presupposes it. Let me answer it in this way. In any other jurisdiction, in any other country, it would follow logically that the voter would reward the government. In our jurisdiction, in our country, there is always, as I've said, the need for the voter to reconcile their lived experience with the data that is provided. And we have to not take it for granted that the voter is making that reconciliation in their head. There is a very high level of cynicism, of disbelief. Even when the number is presented to the average person, the notion is don't trust what government tell you, even when it is presented. And it's not just with the statistics for the reduction in poverty. Murders are down 40-odd%. But if you were to ask people, what do you think about crime? They will tell you, crime is high. Ask them another question. Have you experienced crime? They will tell you no. So, which is what we have picked up in surveys over and over again. So there is a bias in outlook. And for many years, for decades, it's natural. If for decades, the results that you have been given are negative results, that you can only be looking for crime to be rising, debt to be rising, growth to be falling off, all the negatives, then you develop a negative bias. You start to look at the glass as not half full, but half empty. Our job is to change perceptions, and perceptions don't change overnight. It takes a long time, and it takes repeating over and over and over and over and over and over again. I've said it before, Jamaica is in a transformation. There is a cocoon in which we are. And once you're in that cocoon, you can't really see the movement from the caterpillar to the butterfly. It is when the butterfly emerges. You say, oh, yes, we have transformed. But ever so often, there are milestones reached in that journey of transformation. We reached one last week when we opened the Morant Bay Urban Center. I'm certain that all Jamaica would have been able to look at the Goodyear factory, which was opened in the 60s, and see what it is today. They're going to be able to see the Montego Bay Perimeter Road and see that massive transformation. And there are numerous other things that are ongoing. We're in this cocoon of transformation. So those persons who are wedded to the negative, who want to believe nothing is happening, our job is to say, hey friend, hey brethren, my brother, my sister, yo, look on all the things that we are going, man. Enough things are going. To counter those people whose job it is and what they always try to do is to spew the negative. For me, I'm a positive thinker. I don't put negative energy into the atmosphere. You have never heard me speak negatively of anyone or anything. I try to be positive always, and I believe God has been good to me because I have chosen to take the positive and the higher road. God bless you all, and thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you, Prime Minister. All right, we have time for a couple more. I know we're way past 10 o'clock, so I do know we have some time for a couple more questions.
Yes, Minister, thank you. Let's go to the Gleaner, and then we have some of our students who want to ask a few questions.
Good morning, ministers. Good morning, everyone. Shoshana Small from the Gleaner. I do have questions for Minister Charles and Minister Williams.
Charles and Minister Williams can come forward.
My first question is to Minister Williams. How concerned is the government that commercial banks are not reducing their interest rates despite multiple reductions by the BOJ? And in January of this year, the BOJ, before Parliament, said they are contemplating using the law to get the banks to adjust their interest rates so that consumers can benefit. Is that something that the government would be supporting?
All right, so you would have heard the Bank of Jamaica many times talk about the transition mechanism of their monetary policy, that it is not working as well as they would like it to work. And the Bank of Jamaica has been at pains to speak with banks about this. I am considering that this very strong signal that the Bank of Jamaica has sent, because if you will recall, rates were at a low, way low, 0.25%. They moved all the way up to, I think, about 7%, and they have been coming down now. This is a very strong signal that the Bank of Jamaica is sending now with the reduction in the overnight rate to banks. And I believe that the banks, we will begin to see it. That's my belief. No data just yet. But as rates continue to move down, we will begin to see the banks respond.
Minister Charles?
Sorry. Can you share with us the findings of the investigations into the Chinese-owned auto repair shop? Are they cleared to reopen? And also, a few months ago, I believe, you shared that the ministry is updating its permit system. Can we get a further, can we get a further update on that?
Thank you. As it relates to the situation with the mechanics, is a wholehearted company. I can advise that they have made formal applications for the regularization of their status. It is an interministerial process in terms of advancing the necessary assessments to determine if any sanctions or what sanctions through the Ministry of National Security, and also to identify and to advance whatever issues in terms of work permit or immigration status will be required for them to be regularized. There are two things that we said that we have continued to do. Is one, to make sure that the rule of law is upheld in Jamaica, and that anyone operating who is a foreign national, which is what comes under the Ministry of Labour and Social Security, does so in adherence to the law. And secondly, that we hear the Jamaicans, the hundreds and thousands. I've received letters, I've received calls, and several persons who have indicated that the gap in that space in terms of the labour market is persuading them to encourage the government to help these companies to get a space because of the affordability, reliability, and effectiveness of their service. And so we do not create any barrier. We are facilitating as best as we can. Once the law is adhered to, we are continuing to do everything we can to ensure that they can reopen as quickly as possible. And those, I can tell you that the applications are now at the Ministry of Labour and Social Security.
I'm sorry, we really are pressed for time. Can we just do, we can follow up right after, but let's just do the students, and then we really have to wrap. The ministers have to make a hard stop because of some other meetings. Or student, could you identify yourself, please?
Good morning. Good morning. My name is Rajay Bennett. I'm a member of the UMONA Guild Council. And as myself and many of my colleagues are transitioning from the undergraduate level to the postgraduate level, and some of us may be looking to enter the world of work, our question is what steps are being put in place by the Ministry of Education to address the issue of brain drain, because many of us have been appealed to by overseas entities, companies, and countries. So what steps are the ministry putting in place to address the issue of brain drain and sometimes even regional retention, because two of our colleagues here are not Jamaican citizens, they're Caribbean nationals?
Yeah. All right, that's a good question, and I don't know that it's just a question for the Ministry of Education. It's a all-of-country question in terms of brain drain. And I think you've been here learning about policy and deliberate policy and strategies in our country. I remember when I graduated from UE, there were many opportunities overseas. I lived abroad, came back home because I wanted to be home. But so many of those who I graduated with are not in Jamaica. They chose to go overseas. But the situation never looked the way it looked now. And many of those are now returning to Jamaica and asking, my gosh, what's going on in Jamaica? I need to be there. I need to see what are the opportunities here. It's a very different time than you've ever seen. And you've heard the Prime Minister speak about the vision of Jamaica and where we want to be. And it's going to be very important that you're a part of that solution and that future. There are so many opportunities opening up for young people in business, in the tech world, in so many different areas. And so when I speak to young people, I speak about the opportunities that are here and how you can actually move up even quicker in a Jamaican context. Now we're doing much more in terms of housing. So the housing policy, and the Minister of Housing was here, who's the Prime Minister. There's a lot of work going in that area. He's looking at more housing for young people. We already have a policy where a percentage of everything that NHT builds has to go to young people under 35. And we've been doing that. We had one development in Montego Bay where it was 20-something% of the solutions went to young people under 35. So there'll be more of that kind of work. We have lots of opportunities through DBJ, through the Ministry of Labour, through many different entities, HEART, for entrepreneurship support. And so we're helping young people who want to start their own business to start a business here in Jamaica. And there are so many entities that are demanding work. You've seen the unemployment numbers. In the tourism sector, there is so much work that's available. In many different areas, there's so much work available. This is a different Jamaica. And the government is putting in place the policies to make crime less of a problem, to make sure that we have policies that can help your business. That's what the Ministry of Finance has been doing. The minister has been doing a lot of work there to make sure that your business can thrive in an environment of certainty that businesses in the 1980s and 1990s when I was growing up never had. And so we're setting the environment for you to come and run Jamaica You're going to come and you're going to do big things. And so it's conversations we want to keep having. I spoke to the guild president the last time and I said, you're an advisor to me because we have to work through what policies you want. And we're listening to you. The Minister of Finance listened to you when she did the changes to student loans. It was because you asked her and she listened. And so as government, we're going to listen to you. We don't have all the answers. You know what will keep you here. And our goal is to listen to you and do what we've been doing, which is deliberately putting strategies in place that take Jamaica forward. And you need to be a part of that with us.
Minister,
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
I know we're at
let
the
me,
end.
Let me reassure the media who have other questions. Please, the ministers will
There,
be
you
here
can
for
run out
another
with the ministers.
5 minutes, running out, but we really have to make a hard stop at
Yes.
10:28. We have 2
All
more
right.
minutes.
Thank
So
you. I just have one last thing to mention. Thank you, Minister. Before we close, there had been some discussions around increments. And this is another area where the Minister of Finance has delivered for our teachers. The Minister of Finance had said that increments would be paid by the end of the first quarter of the fiscal year. The fiscal year ends in June. So the anticipation was that increments would be paid by June. But I'm happy to note that the teachers are happy this morning and yesterday, those who saw their pay, because increments were paid 1 month early. The Ministry of Finance sent over $1 billion to pay increments to our teachers as a signal of how much value we place in these workers. And so 1 month early, we got the over $1 billion, I think it was $1.4 billion, sent to the Ministry of Education so that teachers could get their increments. And this again is the Ministry of Finance saying, I make a commitment and I try my best to do it, to even over deliver to our important public sector workers and especially to our teachers. So I know a lot of teachers are happy. They've been sending messages and I'm happy too that you've been able to get your increments 1 month early thanks to our wonderful Minister of Finance, who was Minister of Education until recently. And so tomorrow is Labor Day, and I hope that you will be out in your numbers laboring. I know my daughter told me that Labor Day is supposed to be spent resting. So you know she's going to be with me out there on the road so that she understands that Labor Day is about service. And so Labor Day is about service. Our National Labor Day project will focus on refurbishing the Environmental and Research Park at Mason River in Clarendon. And there are many, many Labor Day activities across the country. This is how we, as a people, can continue to lift up Jamaica and make Jamaica even better. This morning you heard about good governance. Now tomorrow is all about all of us playing our role in creating the Jamaica that we all want to live in. And as we close out today, as always, I say thank you for listening, and God continue to bless this wonderful, wonderful Jamaica land that we all so much love. Thank you.
And that's where we come to the end of today's live coverage of the Jamaica House Live here on WDT Media TV. I'm Dudley Thompson. Again, thanks for watching. See you then. Let me do our next live. Have yourselves a wonderful day and keep it locked to us here on WDT Media TV.